So Red is working on the septic. He's already has one of the leach fields filled in with gravel and leveled and has the pipe in. The inspector came yesterday and said everything looked good, so now he's able to put the gravel in and have to do one more inspection before he can completely bury it. So we'll go take a look and see what he's been up to. I think he just added some gravel to the leach field, and now he's got a hand shovel to get it all level.
At the end of each field, you're required to install an inspection pipe, which basically is just a pipe that has a 3 feet end of perforated pipe that's inserted down through the rock layer, and then has a regular piece of pipe without holes that goes above the surface and is capped, so that later you can come back in, take that cap off, and look down that pipe and see what the water level is and actually measure the water level in the leach field. So you've got this 3 foot deep layer of rock that your leach pipe is laying on top of. As the liquid comes out of your tank, it goes down into that rock layer. If you're using a lot of water level in that 3 foot deep rock base will rise or lower. And so this gives you an opportunity to inspect both sides and see what the water level is. Make sure they're even. It'll tell you if your leach field is even. And just see how your septic system is doing. So that's a requirement, and I'm putting those in at the end of each leach trench. One of the cool features of the owner-builder opt-out permit system here encourage you and actually require you as part of the permit to create a gray water drainage system separate from your black water drainage system. So this septic system is our black water. And like the kitchen sink will drain into here and other things, but part of the requirements are that at least 2 drains go into a gray water system that you use, that just drains outside the house, that can be used to water a garden or grass or something along those lines. And so you can capture the water from your shower or bathroom sink. You can't do it like a kitchen sink, but you have to have at least 2 of those drains connected in dispersing outside the house in a gray water system. So I think that's cool that they require that, and I think that's makes a lot of sense and something we should be doing as a way to conserve water and better use our resources. So to get ready for the second inspection, you have to have all of your pipe basically downstream of the tank laid, and it has to be level. So you have to have your D-box in place, have the tank pipe go into that, and then have all the pipe run down the complete length of your leach fields, from the D-box. And all that has to be, at the proper elevation, and, they'll check a level when they come out to do their inspection. It's critical that you have all those elevations that, it's downhill from your tank to the D-box, and then it's also, downhill from the D-box to the beginning of the leach field. And that elevation drop is important, that you don't get too much or too little. And then the leach pipe itself should be roughly leveled down the length of the leach field. And so that's what I'm trying to achieve here, and that's what the inspector will be checking when he comes out for that second inspection. The perforated leach pipe has 2 sets of holes going down its length, and so you don't actually put the holes directly facing downward. You kind of center the 2 sets of holes off to the center, equidistant from the center, kind of facing in the downward direction, so that there is a channel that the water can travel down to disperse the water to all the holes. So the liquid has to come up a tiny bit in the pipe in order to actually reach the holes and exit the pipe. So it can travel down the full length of the pipe before it starts exiting the holes. And to make that easier, I noticed on this pipe that there's printing facing directly up. And so if you just align that printing, facing directly upward, then that'll get your 2 sets of holes aligned correctly in the bottom of the trench. Also, you have to place a cap at the end so that if there's a lot of water coming out quickly, that cap will stop the water and force it to go out of those perforated holes. So after we passed all inspections and we were cleared to bury the system, The first order of business was to bed the pipe connecting the tank to the D-box and the D-box to the leach field, as well as bed the D-box completely. So basically that was a lot of hand digging, throwing in loose dirt around the pipe and carefully packing that in, using my feet and compacting that soil in order to support the pipe at the correct elevations. This pipe will bend really easily, and if you were to just dump a bunch of dirt on it, you would create a sag in the pipe and the water wouldn't flow properly. And you could also dislodge the D-box and get it cocked or crooked. So I went in and basically filled up the trenches by hand and compacted in layers until it was above the level of those interconnecting pipes and also above the level of the D-box. So I basically buried the D-box and all the interconnecting pipe there, and compacted that all in by hand before I did anything with the backhoe. Today I had the second inspection on the septic system, and it passed, thankfully. And so I had to do a leak test on the system, which involved filling up the tank to the outlet, or to the inlet of the outlet, basically, letting it sit for an hour and see if there's any leaks, and then I'll leave it full overnight and check it again. With that done, I'm ready to backfill the system now. And so I've been backfilling the tank here, and so I've been just dumping in dirt with the backhoe or by hand, and then kind of evening it out around the perimeter of the tank, and then kind of compacting it with my feet, and really getting it up into those ribs to where it's really well packed in and supported. That's critical with these infiltrator tanks. They really need the support of the dirt in order to have the integrity that they're supposed to have. And so I'm taking my time and make sure it's really well packed in as I go. I'm about halfway up, and I'll just keep going till I get near the top. I can't bury the tank until I get my risers on, and I'm going to be putting 6-inch risers on each of the manholes, and I can't get those because they're on back order. So as soon as those come in on back order, apparently there's a shortage of the resin that they use to make these. It's kind of a nationwide problem. And so there's a shortage on tanks and risers and anything made with this material. As soon as I get those risers in, I'll put the risers on, and then I'll be able to bury the top of the tank. But I can get everything else backfilled and done. So kind of the next thing I'm going to do is cover the pipe with rock. And so I'll put about 6 more inches of rock on, enough to cover the pipe. And then I'll put a layer of geotextile fabric down to keep the dirt from coming into the rock. And then I'll backfill and then I'll try to leave it slightly mounded over the leach field and the tank to account for settlement. When I went to backfill and bury the pipe with that 6-inch layer of rock, it's actually only 2 inches on top of the pipe, and then kind of filling in the trench to a level 2 inches above the pipe with rock. So you're putting in about 6 inches of rock there, since it's 4-inch pipe. Anyway, that actually went better than I expected. I was able to just bring in, loads of gravel and kind of slowly add it to the trench and kind of get out and check it, and then move it around with my feet or with a shovel, and you can kind of use the pipe, depth as a gauge, and so that wasn't as bad as I thought. I thought that was going to be a pretty laborious task, but it actually only took, a few hours to, get all that buried to depth, smoothed out, and ready to put on the geotextile fabric. When backfilling the trenches with the backhoes, it's important not to drive over the leach field because you can crush the pipe, you can move the pipe, you can damage that fabric. It's also critical not to drive over the septic tank because you can actually collapse it with the weight of a backhoe. So basically I had to come in from the side and dump the dirt on it, and then come in by hand and kind of spread that out, and then just use the bucket to kind of scrape it smooth off to the side. And so this process took quite a while, even using the backhoe, and I had to try to create mounds so that in the future, as rains and stuff come and that soil settles, it'll kind of settle out to a pretty flat state instead of having dips where those trenches are. So, and creating those mounds and getting everything smoothed out took a good bit of work, and a combination of backhoe and shovel work. So applying that geotextile fabric layer wasn't too bad either. You just get a roll and start, laying it down in the trench, and, use a little bit of dirt every so often to hold it in place. And then I went back and kind of backfilled by hand. So I just threw dirt over it until I completely covered the cloth with dirt. And that way I felt like it was all held down exactly where I wanted it, and dumping a big, huge load of dirt wouldn't, damage the fabric. So that fabric is basically just to create a layer between the rock and the dirt that helps keep the dirt from permeating down into the rock, and thereby taking away from the leaching capacity of the rock. You want that to be kind of a pure rock layer so that it has the capacity to hold a lot of water in between the rocks. And if that's all full of dirt, then it loses its leaching properties. And so you want to keep that dirt out of the rock, and so that's what that layer is for. So I bedded all that by hand completely before I started using the backhoe to completely backfill the trenches. Once I had the yard all leveled, I'm pretty much done with the septic system and ready to move on to the next phase of the project. It really looks a lot different. There's this huge, clear, relatively flat space out in front of where our house will be in the future, and it looks a lot like a front yard. But it's nice to have all that done. Of course, I still will need to come back and completely finish backfilling over the tank once I get those risers. But that's all that's left. The septic project is now complete, and I'm ready to move on to the foundation of our home.